Welcome to the deep dive, where we, unpack complex topics and try to get to those like golden nuggets of knowledge. And today we are diving deep into Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature.
Okay.
And we're going to be using a really insightful summary from the Escaping Ordinary YouTube channel.
Right.
And so what's cool about this is that you're going to get all of the core concepts of the book without having to actually read through the whole thing.
You got it. It's like a cheat sheet for understanding human behavior,
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this book is that it doesn't, it doesn't sugarcoat anything.
Right.
Greene really argues that, mastering human nature is the ultimate life hack,
Right.
Success really hinges on understanding not just what people say, but, the hidden forces that are driving their actions.
Yeah, and that's what I found so compelling about it. It's like he's handing you this decoder ring for human interaction.
Right? He's really delving into that irrational side of us, the part of us that overrides logic, even when we think we're being perfectly rational.
Exactly, and he calls this the law of irrationality.
Oh.
And he illustrates it really brilliantly with this example of emotional decision-making. And it's kind of a humbling realization, that even when we believe we're being logical, emotions can often lead us astray.
So how do we start to recognize those impulses in ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. Greene is a huge advocate for self-awareness.
Right.
He emphasizes that it's so important to understand, your own emotional triggers and learn how to manage them.
Yeah.
This not only helps you to make clear decisions, but it also prevents, your emotions from controlling you.
It's funny because I was reading about the law of narcissism.
Okay.
And it just made me think about how often we project our own insecurities onto other people.
Right, and that's a great observation.
Yeah.
And it ties in perfectly with another point that Greene makes. He argues that narcissism exists on a spectrum.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
And recognizing where someone falls on that spectrum
Right.
can be crucial in determining how to deal with them effectively.
So it's not just about spotting the stereotypical over-the-top narcissist.
Right.
Okay.
Some narcissists can be very charming and persuasive, and they use their charisma to manipulate others.
Right.
And then there are others who are much more aggressive and domineering. They want to control everyone around them.
Right.
So by understanding these nuances,
Yeah.
we can protect ourselves from being manipulated.
Sure.
And, find ways to interact with them more constructively.
Yeah, it's almost like having a playbook for navigating all these different personalities.
Yeah.
You know,
It is.
which I find incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
And so, and this leads me to another question.
Okay.
The source material really emphasizes this importance of becoming a keen observer of human behavior.
Absolutely.
How do we actually go about doing that?
Yeah. So Greene, he encourages us to pay attention to these subtle cues that people give off, their body language, their tone of voice,
Right.
even their choice of words.
Yeah.
By observing these details, we can gain insights into their motivations,
Okay.
predict their actions, and ultimately navigate interactions more effectively.
Yeah. I've been trying to be more observant myself.
Good.
And it is fascinating how much information we transmit through our actions unknowingly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like we're all just sending out these silent signals all the time.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Greene delves into these specific laws of human nature, each of which offers, practical strategies for navigating these complexities.
Okay.
Now, we've touched on narcissism, but there's so much more to explore.
Let's dive into another one. What law particularly resonated with you?
The law of compulsive behavior.
Yep.
This one really struck me. Greene suggests that many of us are trapped in these repetitive patterns of behavior driven by unconscious needs and desires.
Okay.
And this one resonated with me on a personal level because I recognize some of those patterns in my own life.
Right.
You know what
I
I
think
mean?
we all have those moments where we're like, why do I keep doing this?
Exactly.
Yeah, we're stuck in a loop.
We are.
How do we break free?
So Greene emphasizes the importance of awareness.
Yeah.
We need to identify that underlying need that's driving that behavior.
Right.
For instance, someone who's constantly seeking approval might be masking deep insecurity. Once we understand that root cause, we can start addressing it directly.
So it's about understanding the why behind our action.
Exactly.
Yeah, which can be incredibly empowering.
It is.
But I'm also curious about how this applies to understanding others.
Okay.
Can we use this knowledge to influence their behavior?
Absolutely. And this is where Greene's ideas can feel a bit controversial. Recognizing these patterns in others
Yeah.
can be used strategically to influence them.
Okay.
For example, if you know someone is driven by a need for recognition,
Right.
you can motivate them by publicly acknowledging their efforts.
Right.
Or if you're dealing with someone who's resistant to change, framing your proposal in a way that appeals to their need for security might be more effective.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Because on the one hand, you're talking about understanding people on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you're talking about using that knowledge to potentially steer their behavior.
Right.
Where do we draw the line between understanding and manipulation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is where ethical considerations become so crucial.
Right.
While Greene provides these tools for understanding and navigating human nature, it's ultimately up to us to use them responsibly.
So it's this delicate balance, like we're given this powerful knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's our responsibility to wield it ethically.
Yeah.
Got it. I have to admit, I'm already finding myself observing people differently.
Good.
Looking for those subtle cues and trying to understand their motivations.
That's great.
It's like a whole new world has opened up.
It is quite exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
There are so many other fascinating laws that Greene explores in this book,
Okay.
each offering its own insights into the complexities of human behavior.
Well, let's dive into some more of them. What other gems did you uncover in your deep dive?
Okay, so one that I found particularly fascinating is the law of envy.
Okay.
Which explores, the insidious ways that envy can impact our thoughts and actions.
Ooh, envy. That's a juicy one.
It is.
I think we've all experienced that at some point or another,
Absolutely.
whether we want to admit it or not. So how does Greene suggest we deal with envy, both in ourselves and in others?
Well, he starts by highlighting how envy often disguises itself as other emotions,
Okay.
like anger or resentment. We might not even realize we're envious until we really kind of dig a little deeper. And then he dives into these different types of envy,
Okay.
explaining how some people are driven by a desire for what others have,
Right.
while others are more focused on tearing down those they perceive as threats.
That's interesting because it suggests that envy isn't always about wanting what someone else has.
Right.
Yeah, it can also be about diminishing their accomplishments to make ourselves feel better.
Exactly. And Greene argues that recognizing this dynamic is key to navigating envy effectively.
Okay.
He suggests that instead of suppressing or denying our feelings of envy,
Right.
we should use them as fuel for self-improvement.
So it's about channeling that envy into something productive.
Exactly.
Almost like turning a negative emotion into a positive motivator. I like that.
Yeah.
But what about dealing with envious people?
Okay.
How do we protect ourselves from their negativity?
Greene offers some really insightful strategies for this as well.
Oh, hey.
He emphasizes the importance of not provoking envy in others.
By being overly boastful or flaunting our successes.
Right.
Instead, he suggests practicing a form of strategic humility,
Okay.
where we acknowledge our accomplishments without rubbing them in people's faces.
It's like finding that sweet spot between being proud of what you've achieved
Yeah,
and not making others feel inadequate.
right.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
He also suggests setting firm boundaries with envious people,
Absolutely.
making it clear that we won't tolerate their negativity.
Yes.
Sometimes the best way to deal with envy is to just distance ourselves from those who constantly try to bring us down.
You got it.
Now, shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
I'm curious about the law of conformity.
Okay.
We briefly touched on it earlier.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear more about how it plays out in everyday life.
Ah, yes, the law of conformity.
Yeah.
This one's all about our innate desire to fit in and belong,
Right.
which can be both a blessing and a curse. Greene argues that this deep-seated need for acceptance
Can lead us to suppress our individuality.
Right.
And conform to group norms even when they go against our better judgment.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
It's like we're wired to seek approval from others,
We are.
even if it means compromising our own values or beliefs.
Exactly. And Greene provides some compelling examples of how this plays out, in history and in our own lives.
Yeah.
Think about fashion trends, peer pressure, even the way we behave on social media.
Right.
We're constantly bombarded with messages about what's cool,
Yeah.
what's acceptable, what will make us popular.
It's almost like we're being subtly nudged towards conformity without even realizing it.
We are.
So how do we resist this pull
Yeah.
and stay true to ourselves?
Well, Greene suggests cultivating a strong sense of self-awareness
Okay.
and developing our own internal compass.
Okay.
This involves understanding our values, our beliefs, our motivations,
Right.
so that we're not swayed by the whims of the crowd.
That's so important,
Yeah,
especially in today's world where we're constantly being bombarded with external influences.
absolutely.
But I'm also curious about the positive aspects of conformity.
Okay.
Isn't there a certain value in belonging to a group
Yeah,
and sharing common values?
absolutely. Greene acknowledges that conformity isn't inherently bad.
Yeah.
In fact, it can be essential for social cohesion and cooperation.
Right.
The key, he argues, is finding that balance
Okay.
between fitting in and standing out,
Right.
between honoring our individuality
Yep.
and respecting the norms of the group.
It's like finding that sweet spot
It is.
where we can be both part of the group and true to ourselves.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Greene's ideas can sometimes feel a bit controversial.
Yeah.
Where do you see the potential for these laws to be misused or misinterpreted?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one we should all be mindful of.
Right.
While Greene's work offers these valuable insights into human behavior,
Yeah.
it's important to remember that these are just tools. They can be used for good or for ill,
Right.
depending on the intentions of the person wielding them.
So it's like any powerful tool.
It
It can be used to build or destroy,
Exactly.
to help or to harm.
Yeah,
It all comes down to the wielder's intent.
you got it.
And I think it's important to approach Greene's work with a critical eye.
Absolutely.
Question our own motivations as we explore these laws.
Yeah.
Are we seeking to understand human nature to improve our interactions
Right.
and build stronger relationships? Or are we looking for ways to manipulate and exploit others for our own gain?
That's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of something that Greene mentioned about the importance of developing what he calls strategic empathy.
Okay. Can you elaborate on what that means and how it relates to using these laws ethically?
Of course. So strategic empathy is about going beyond simply understanding someone's feelings.
Okay.
It's about understanding their motivations, their thought processes,
Right.
their weaknesses,
Yeah.
and even their dark side. But it's also about maintaining a degree of detachment
Okay.
so that you don't get caught up in their emotional turmoil.
So it's like being a detective of human nature,
Exactly.
observing and analyzing
Yeah.
without getting emotionally invested.
Precisely. You want to understand people deeply,
Yeah.
but maintain a certain level of objectivity.
Right.
This allows you to make clearer judgments
Okay.
and act strategically rather than reactively.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like having that emotional shield
Yeah,
that protect you from being manipulated or drained by others' negativity.
exactly.
But how do we actually cultivate strategic empathy?
Right.
Are there any specific techniques Greene recommends?
One of the most important techniques is paying close attention to people's actions
Okay.
rather than just their words.
Right.
Observe their body language, their tone of voice, their
Mhm.
patterns of behavior. These nonverbal cues often reveal more than what they're consciously saying.
It's like that saying, actions speak louder than words. So by observing these subtle cues,
Yeah.
we can gain a deeper understanding of people's true intentions and motivations.
You got it.
And Greene also suggests practicing perspective taking,
Absolutely.
trying to see the world through the other person's eyes.
Yes.
This can help us understand their behavior, even if we don't agree with it.
Precisely.
It's about stepping outside of our own biases and assumptions
Yeah.
and trying to see the world from their point of view.
Exactly. And by combining careful observation with perspective taking,
Okay.
we can develop a much more nuanced understanding of human nature
Right.
and use that knowledge to navigate our interactions more effectively.
This all makes so much sense, but I have to admit it can feel a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's so much to observe, so many layers to consider.
Right.
How do we avoid getting lost in all the complexities?
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
And it's where the idea of strategic empathy becomes so crucial.
Oh.
It's not about overanalyzing every interaction
Right.
or becoming paranoid about people's intentions. It's about developing this heightened awareness of human behavior and using that awareness to make more informed decisions in our interactions.
So it's about finding that balance
It is.
between being observant and not overthinking everything.
Exactly. And remember, Greene's work is meant to be a guide, not a set of rigid rules.
Cool.
It's about expanding our understanding of human behavior,
Right.
developing greater self-awareness,
Yeah.
and using this knowledge to improve our interactions and achieve our goals in a more thoughtful and effective way.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
It
We've
is.
covered so much ground,
Yeah.
from the importance of understanding irrationality to mastering the art of seduction in the most ethical sense, of
Of
course.
course.
But before we wrap up this part of our exploration,
Okay.
I want to touch on one more key takeaway that really resonated with me.
I'm intrigued. What is it?
It's the idea that we're all playing roles, whether we're conscious of it or not.
Oh, yeah.
It really struck me how Greene emphasizes this throughout the book.
Absolutely. That's a powerful concept and one that's often overlooked, I think.
Yeah.
We tend to think of ourselves as these like authentic individuals,
Right.
but the reality is that we constantly adapt our behavior,
Okay.
depending on the situation and the people we're with.
Yeah.
It's like we're wearing different masks,
Mhm.
to project a certain image or achieve a desired effect.
It's like we're all actors on the stage of life,
Oh, we are.
each playing our assigned roles.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, is there any room for authenticity in this grand performance?
That's a question that Greene grapples with as well.
Yeah.
He argues that while we might play different roles, the
Mhm.
key is to ensure that those roles align with our true selves.
Hmm.
It's about being self-aware and intentional,
Right.
not just putting on a performance for personal gain.
So it's about finding that balance between adapting to different situations
Yeah,
and staying true to our core values.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
about using this understanding of human nature to create more genuine connections and
Yeah.
navigate social situations with greater skill and awareness.
Right.
But it's also about recognizing that everyone else is playing a role, too.
Yeah.
And this can be incredibly helpful, in understanding their motivations and predicting their actions.
Yeah, it's like we're given this behind-the-scenes look at the human drama,
It is.
seeing the strings being pulled and the motivations driving the characters.
Exactly.
But doesn't this make us more likely to become cynical or distrustful of others?
Not necessarily. I think it's more about developing a healthy skepticism
Okay.
while still maintaining an open heart.
Right.
We can be aware of the roles people play without assuming they're always being manipulative or insincere.
Right.
Sometimes these roles are simply a way of navigating social complexities
Right.
and presenting our best selves to the world.
So it's about understanding the game without becoming jaded by it.
Precisely. And remember, Greene's work is ultimately about empowering us
Yeah.
by understanding the laws of human nature. Right.
We can become more effective in our interactions, achieve our goals, and live more fulfilling lives.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey.
It hasn't.
We've covered so much ground, from the power of irrationality to the importance of strategic empathy.
Absolutely.
And I feel like I've gained a whole new set of tools for understanding myself and the people around me.
Me too. It's been a fascinating exploration, and I'm excited to continue applying these insights in my own life.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our deep dive into the laws of human nature.
Yeah.
It's been a thought-provoking conversation, and I hope our listeners feel empowered to go out there and observe the world with a fresh perspective.
Absolutely. The more we observe, the more we learn, and the more adept we become at understanding this fascinating mystery of human nature.
And who knows, maybe we'll even uncover a few of our own hidden motives along the way.
We might.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring.